Ladies and gentlemen, Woody Allen has a very funny joke, but a very mordant joke, the word mordant in English. He says, never before in history has mankind faced such a crossroads. Down one road is despair and utter exhaustion, and down the other, complete elimination. Let us hope we have the wisdom to choose wisely. If you speak English well, it's kind of funny, but it's also sad. We are never before faced such a crash in the systems whereby we operate our part of the world in history. The beginning of the 21st century is not really a happy place for most of the people on this planet. But that's because we're a very strange sort of animal, us humans. We have been very successful because we've managed to construct some sort of organic system that has made us extremely successful and dominate the natural order of things in the planet. Because man does not act from self-interest. Man acts in the needs of the moment. If we acted in self-interest, we wouldn't need platforms like this, conferences like this. We wouldn't have food companies trying to find ways of making it sustainable for future generations to behave correctly and understand that from which our nurture comes. I was on tour with my band back in the late 1970s, and I was in Greenwich Village in New York, and I'd been around America, and I was desperate for a cup of coffee with proper milk, just normal milk. And I went to the cafe in Greenwich Village, beautiful old cafe with signs on the window saying cappuccino with genuine cream. And I was fed up of this chemical stuff that the Americans have been giving me to put in my coffee. And I asked the guy, I said, now, are you sure? Are you really sure that this is proper milk? And he goes, yeah, it's proper milk. And I said, well, you know, milk that comes from the country. He goes, yes. He goes, our chef, Rene, he makes it himself in the kitchen. If you want to come back and see Rene make... I said, Rene doesn't make the milk. You get it from a cow. And he said, what the fuck are you talking about, a cow? And I said, milk comes out of a cow. Now, that's a true story. It sounds apocryphal. I didn't have my cappuccino and I didn't have my milk. It's true, but it's sad. All of us know the famous statues on the Easter Islands. We see these enormous monuments to human creativity. But like Woody Allen's joke, we also see them as huge human monuments to ultimate folly. Because we now believe that the Easter Islanders, there were several groups amongst them. And when they inhabited the islands were very forested. There were trees everywhere. And from the trees and the woods, they got the animals that sustained them and fish from the seas. But it became part of their religion to build these immense statues that we so admire today. And a competition began between these groups as to who had the most power. The more powerful the statues, the more numerous the statues, the more power the group had. But in order to make the statues, you had to cut the trees down, to push them into place and to roll them into the most sacred areas. And soon, there were just a few trees left. And because there were few trees, there were few animals to hunt. And the population began to die. And in the end, what did the population of the Easter Islands do? They could choose to stay alive and keep their trees or grow more. But the last few remaining humans cut down the last trees to build more statues, and so they died. And their civilization died with them, and we are left with the stone memories of these humans. Well, ladies and gentlemen, today we are all Easter Islanders. We've forgotten that the systems we've built upon an abundance of food, civilization, will not survive if we do not have the means to enable it to thrive. We're at that precise moment. We know that the population is doubling. I'm sure you've heard this endlessly throughout this conference. We know that we have to double the amount of food we need with half the land, with 40% less water, with 30% less chemical inputs. We know that agriculture contributes 10 to 12% of greenhouse gases, and we know that agriculture uses 70% of blue water. It seems an insoluble conundrum, and it will remain insoluble. We know that undernourishment takes 5 to 10% of GDP. With cognitive impairment, with physical impairment, when children can't grow, when their minds can't develop, it costs us 5 to 10%. We know that a 1% protein uptake increases GDP 0.45%. 1% of protein uptake. So you've heard from Jeff Sachs and everybody else how this thing that you're trying to deal with here is essential to the state. It's essential to the workings of the economy. And yet we simply don't think about it in our part of the world because we do not act out of self-interest. We act in the needs of the moment. And how have we got here? Well, ladies and gentlemen, at the beginning of this century, there was a strange idea that somehow the economy and society were separated. But that was never the case. The good economy and the good society go together. And when you have an economic logic built on the single idea of progress, and progress is defined economically as growth, and growth is only a euphemism for more. More of what? More of everything, all the time, so that we throw out that most essential thing, food. 43% waste in the UK. More of everything, all the time. Give me another phone with $1,000. Give me this, give me that, give me. It's Christmas. Give me. More has become the economics of greed. And if greed is the logic, if by the year 2100, 80 years, consumption is estimated to have risen at 1,200% from today. 1,200% increase in consumption. If that's the case, then we are not viable. And then it's over. So the logics of now presuppose no tomorrow. And if in 2000, suddenly it just became this thing unto itself, the economy, and this other thing that was a bit of a bore, society, then that finally crashed in 2007. And we still today, particularly in Europe and the United States, feel the reverberations of that vast gulf of social inequality, of undernourishment, of lack of education and lack of health. We can tangibly feel our systems disintegrating. Now, a lot of the people, because I've been talking to some of the organizers of this festival, have been talking about the system is broken. Jeff Sachs talked about it. Jeff is a friend of mine. He's a very passionate man. But what is the system of food? Well, we know whatever it is, it's not viable. not when you go into the supermarket and the most expensive food is bread and water. How did we get to the point where the basic necessity of what it is to be human is more expensive than your le grand fromage, as the French say? How? What bizarre system of values have we got that we will drink 4-year-old water from Fiji in a plastic bottle when we can turn on the tap and there it is? What happened to us? We became disconnected, not just from the economy, but from the life source itself. There are profound forces that shape this world, and all the systems that we humans oppose upon them are froth. Like the top of your cappuccino, just mere froth to nature's drowning depths. We organize ourselves in political, economic, and a social basis with scant regard and utterly removed from the source we depend upon to make these systems function. Why? Have we become so intellectual? Are we so consumed with our own brilliance, and we are a brilliant species, that this stuff is just there? Are we like that American waiter who just thinks you make milk? It doesn't matter. I don't understand where pasta is made or care. Or have we gone the other way where we just say any vegetable in the ground is organic and therefore it's good? We have become perverse. We have a pornographic relationship with food. We use it to form relationships. It's the default position in our social behavior. My friend and I arrived in Milan early, and because it's Milan, we had a delicious lunch. We eat lunch together most days. We have very little. But because it's Milan, because it's brilliant food and delicious wine, we ate. It was social. We enjoyed it. We felt happy. We marveled at the art of the chef. But did we think it was food? No. We enjoyed ourselves. It was entertainment. Food as entertainment. So this change starts with here. Because whatever system there is, it isn't a food system, it's an economic and political system. And so far, for us, it's worked very well. We dominate the planet to such an extent that we are busy destroying it. We are all Easter Islanders. There are more better-fed people in the world than underfed people. There are far too many underfed people. No one in our world should go hungry. How do we know? Because we throw out in Europe 38% of our food wasted. Clearly this is dysfunctional, but it's us. We're dysfunctional. We know that when a developing society really gets purchase on the global economy, when they start eating more protein, the Japanese after the war grew taller. The Chinese, as they began to rationalize their economy under Deng Xiaoping, and now under Xi Jinping, want beef. And the party in China is more afraid of a restless population, a hungry one, than they are of anything else, because it delegitimizes authority. Our authorities don't care about that anymore, because so long as we got the food. But should any of that tip in one direction, then there will be immense social upheaval like you see in every other country around the world. If all our happiness, if all our personal happiness is bound up entirely in our personal circumstance, then it is hard to ask of life, it is hard to ask of the planet more than it has to give. And what do the leaders, what do the politicians say about it? Well, the greatest threat to our planet is the belief that someone else will save it. The politicians will talk about technology, free markets, business, and they will give you messages of innovation and hope. Ladies and gentlemen, hope is not a plan. And if we are going to say, well, the only possible plan is a restructuring of everything, that's not viable. But the confusion that you feel and see around the world today is a product of that reassembling of societal structures, while nature itself goes about its business and begins to harm us. And all of this is explicable because we are going through a new economic revolution. New powers are rising on the back of that. And the function of that revolution is the technology that you are all using right now or is in your pocket. It's happened before. It happened 200 years ago with the Napoleonic Wars, finally ending in the Battle of Waterloo. A new technology, steam, needed to be born to create a new economy and therefore a new politics. And the only way this could begin was because we're human, to destroy ourselves. More boys were killed at the Battle of Waterloo than on the worst day of the Battle of the Somme in the First World War, 100 years later exactly. A new technology, electricity and the internal combustion engine needed to be born. They were here. Planes, tanks. And so an entire structure, an entire politics, an entire culture had to be destroyed. Here we are again, with an even more powerful technology, the web. It has already created chaos in the world markets by moving money internationally faster than anybody can possibly understand. And the markets are going through the roof because they are essentially chaotic, like human society itself. And yet we seek to impose plans. We know how ridiculous political plans are. They never work. That's why we get rid of our governments. And the new government will not work. We can't foretell what's going to happen in 4, 5, 10 years. We can plan. Doesn't work out. 26 years ago, Tim Berners-Lee, a brilliant young Englishman, invented this thing in your pocket. Immediately, it changes everything. And if there is a new economy, therefore there must be a new politics. There must be. One follows the other. It's not here. You guys might elect Berlusconi again. For fuck's sake! Berlusconi, he's a joke. And he's old and he should fuck off. Look at England. We have a choice. Go back to the 70s or go back to the 50s. It's just not working, but it seems to be working in Asia with an oppressive state capitalism. It'll work for a while, but they're making sure that it's their century. While we are confused, while we flounder, while the values and virtues that were created in this very country, in this very city, the values of the Renaissance and the Enlightenment and reason. Why you are here is because you seek to impose the values of logic and reason on an intractable future and current problem. Whither man? How do we deal with nurture? How do we bring everyone on board to contribute to this stumbling 21st century? And you can say the whole system is wrong. Yeah. But the food system is the economic system, is the political system. And you can't say just destroy it all. But we are busily going about that. We don't believe in the capital markets. We do not believe in the four-year systems anymore. We don't really believe in political parties anymore because they're not dealing with what we feel is happening. And while we go and buy our expensive ciabatta and our mineral water, 900,000 people go hungry, malnourished children grow to this size, and their human value is wasted. I work in Africa a lot. 60% of the remaining arable land in the world is in Africa. For 30 years, I have argued that what we must do with this continent so close to this country and Europe, 8 miles distance, 11 kilometers, the richest continent still, us, and the poorest, 11 miles. All our history has been with this continent, from the Romans in North Africa through to the empires of France and England, and it's not a good history. But in that 8-mile tiny gap is all our baleful past and all our future opportunity. And I have argued for 30 years that the poor need a life, that the poor will come to countries where they can achieve a better life, where they can be human, where they can use this thing. I'm Irish. I left Ireland when I was a boy because it offered me nothing. And I went to the UK, and those generous and tolerant people allowed me to be. And in the Mediterranean right now, hungry, tired, poor people are coming here, and Italy gets very little help. But they will continue to come unless we help to grow their economies. Unless we help with industry and agriculture and the small farmer and the productive ability of these vast peoples in that continent where 60% of the last arable land in the planet is. So even if you don't want to help their economies, we are going to go to Africa because we will be forced to, because there will be nowhere else and no way else to grow food. You want to stop the refugees? Grow the economies. You want to know how to do it? The Marshall Plan for Africa. A real one. One of the geniuses of the 20th century, George Marshall. One economy after the Second War. One, the United States. But if you've got a giant economy, who do you sell your stuff to if they have no money? So give those countries the money, and then they'll buy your stuff. That's it. We need to do the same thing for food. You can structure it, you can use sustainability as a model, but sustainability under the present economic logic in a resource-finite world, impossible. It's this size. You can't keep digging fucking holes in the ground, turning on taps. You run out of stuff. We keep hearing that populations will peak in 2050. Really? Really? Seriously? Men and women are going to stop having kids because it's in their interest. Maybe. But how do we even get to 2050? When the systems that were imposed in 1946 are ending now. We see the European Union in trouble. It needs desperate reform. Nobody really believes in the WTO if Trump pulls out, if China won't play it. The United Nations, God bless them. There needs to be a complete revamp. We need to go back to Woody Allen's question. Down one road, complete extinction. Down the other, despair. I'll take despair. I'll take despair. I'll work on despair. But I can't be an Easter Islander and keep building meaningless statues. I can't keep believing in the old systems. Food cannot be divorced from economies, culture, and politics. Food is the culture. Food is the economy. Food ultimately is the politics. And if you look at where we constantly see the pain and the agony and the hunger of dying children, never mind the obesity in our world. Obesity is simply the production of cheap food for the poor. High in sugar, high in protein, very bad for you, and therefore a strain on our national health systems. So the social cost, the economic cost, the political cost, food. One thing, we don't get up tomorrow morning if there's no food in the house. And then we don't get up at all after a few weeks if there's no food in the house. It is all dependent on what we put in our mouths. And what we put in our mouths is dependent on what we do with this thing I'm standing on. It is far cheaper, ladies and gentlemen, to anticipate disaster than to deal with its results. This conference is about anticipating disaster rather than dealing with the consequences. And you don't have to believe that tomorrow must be better than to try and make it so. And why shouldn't we? Anyway, why shouldn't we try and make it better if there is even a small chance of success? And I don't believe we have a choice anymore. I think Woody Allen's joke has now gone beyond the selection to the choice. And if you come to this conference, then it means that you've already made your choice. You've already committed to that choice. And when you go out of here after this conference, then you need to tell others, and they need to become committed. Because if we don't deal with what you've just talked about for the last few days, then I don't see where all of this goes. And in my own life, and I suppose in your lives, you cannot do anything without that sense of commitment to the idea. And I say this because when I was doing Live Aid, I was very tired. I was very nervous. I thought that I had overreached, that I wasn't capable of doing this thing. I was a pop singer. I was talking to Margaret Thatcher. I was talking to the Pope. I was talking to Berlusconi, God help me. And I was on television a lot, telling people, come on, we can do this. And a man saw me on TV and he wrote me a letter. I got a lot of letters. And I kept this one because he said to me, I saw you on television last night, Bob, and you look very tired. And it looked like you were afraid. And he said, in my life, the same thing has happened to me. Not so big, but the same thing. And he said, I read something in a book, which I'm sending you. And he said, it's about the idea of commitment. And it was true for me, and I hope it's true for you. So I kept this because it exactly described what was happening to me. And I work in my kitchen at home. I don't go into an office. And I keep this thing in the cupboard in the kitchen where when I feel that I don't want to continue, then I read this and it gives me more strength. And for events and conferences like this, I bring it with me. And I'll read it to you now. The man who wrote this is a man called F.H. Murray. It's from the 1950s. He was a mountain climber, which is strange, and he writes about commitment in your own lives, with your relationships, commitment, with your jobs, commitment, with your idea about what life is, commitment. Murray says this: until one is committed, there is hesitancy. the chance to draw back, always ineffectiveness. Concerning all acts of initiative and creation, there is one elementary truth, the ignorance of which kills countless ideas and splendid plans. That the moment one definitely commits oneself, then providence, fate, then providence moves too. A whole stream of events issues from the decision, raising in one's favor all manner of unforeseen incidents, meetings, and material assistance which no man could have dreamt would have come his way. And Murray finishes with 2 lines from the German poet Goethe. Whatever you can do, or dream you can, begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we've got the power. I think we've got the geniuses. We just need a little bit of magic. Thank you. Thank you.